buried to her neck for being barren. She was saved by a widowed cowboy who took her home. The sun had just begun to rise over the dry, dusty town of Red Willow, painting the small wooden houses with streaks of gold and orange. Birds sang softly in the distance, but their sweet songs could not hide the tension that hung over the town like a heavy cloud. In the center of town, near the main square, a small crowd had gathered. Their faces were a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and cold judgment. Among them was a young woman named Eliza. She stood silently, her hands trembling at her sides, her heart pounding in fear. She was barely 20, but the hardships she had faced already made her feel much older. Eliza had come to Red Willow with hope in her eyes and a kind heart. She had married a man from the town, someone who promised her love and safety, someone who made her laugh and dreamed with her. But as months turned into years, Eliza remained unable to have a child.
In a town where family and children were considered a woman's greatest duty, this simple truth became a heavy burden.
The whispers began quietly at first, but soon the murmurs turned into open accusations. Some said she was cursed, some claimed she had brought shame upon her family, and others suggested she had done something to anger the spirits. At first, Eliza tried to ignore it. She focused on her daily chores, helping with meals, cleaning the house, and tending to the small garden near her home. She smiled when she could, laughed when the situation allowed, and tried to keep her spirits high. But the town's judgment was relentless. People stared as she walked by, muttering under their breath. Children pointed at her, their innocent fingers cruelly echoing the gossip of their parents. Her husband, though kind in private, began to avoid her gaze, caught between love and the pressure of the town. Eliza felt the weight of every whispered word, every judgmental glance, pressing down on her chest until it was hard to breathe. Then came the day that changed everything. The town council, a group of older men who prided themselves on tradition and keeping order, decided to make an example of Eliza. They claimed it was necessary to punish her for her failure and to warn others who might stray from their rigid customs. Eliza could hardly believe their words. She tried to speak, tried to reason with them, but her voice trembled and faltered. The crowd grew restless, demanding action. Fear gripped her heart as the men ordered her to be buried in the sand. Her body sunk slowly into the ground, leaving only her head exposed. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its heat beating down on Eliza as she struggled against the ropes that held her. The sand pressed tightly around her body, restricting every movement, every breath. She could feel the earth shifting slightly as it was piled over her legs and torso, and a cold panic rose in her chest. Tears stung her eyes, but she could not let them fall. She tried to stay calm, breathing in shallow, controlled breaths, whispering to herself that someone would come, that help would arrive. Memories of her childhood, her mother's gentle smile, her father's strong hands, and her husband's fleeting warmth flickered through her mind. These memories were her only comfort. Hours passed slowly, each second stretching into an eternity. The heat of the sun was relentless, drying her skin, cracking her lips, and leaving her throat parched. The crowd around her seemed indifferent, some watching with curiosity, others with cold satisfaction. Children, unaware of the cruelty, peeked from behind fences and barrels, their wide eyes reflecting the horror of what was happening. Eliza's mind began to drift in and out of reality. She thought of her life before Red Willow, the dreams she had held, the laughter that once filled her days. She imagined herself free, running through fields, feeling the wind on her face, and laughing without fear. Despite the terror, Eliza refused to give up. She whispered prayers, calling out to any higher power that might be listening. She promised herself that she would survive, that she would not let the cruelty of others define her life. She thought of the small joys she still held on to, the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the gentle touch of a kind hand, and clung to them like lifelines. Each breath was a battle, each heartbeat a reminder that she was still alive, still fighting. As the sun reached its peak, casting harsh shadows over the square, Eliza heard faint sounds that made her ears perk up. At first she thought it was the wind, or perhaps the faint rustle of animals in the distance. But then the sounds became clearer. Footsteps approaching, not the hesitant steps of children, or the measured strides of the townsfolk, but heavy, confident steps of someone moving with purpose. Her heart leapt in her chest. Could it be? Could it actually be someone coming to save her? The figure emerged from the edge of the crowd, a man on horseback, his wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his strong face. His eyes scanned the scene quickly, taking in the ropes, the sand, and Eliza's trapped form. Without hesitation, he dismounted, his boots crunching in the dry dirt. He was a stranger to Red Willow, a widowed cowboy named Samuel who traveled alone, guided by his own sense of justice and compassion. When he saw Eliza, something inside him tightened, a mixture of shock, anger, and determination. Samuel did not pause to ask questions or consider the consequences. He knelt beside Eliza, assessing the ropes and the way the sand had been piled around her. His hands were strong and steady as he worked to free her, digging carefully with his fingers and using a small rope he carried to loosen the bindings. Eliza could hardly believe her eyes. Here was a stranger, a man who had no obligation to help her, risking himself to save someone he had never met. She felt a glimmer of hope, fragile but shining brightly against the darkness of fear that had surrounded her for so long. Minutes felt like hours as Samuel worked tirelessly, sweat running down his forehead, muscles straining against the weight of the sand and the tight ropes. Eliza tried to speak, to thank him, but her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. Samuel looked at her, his eyes calm but firm. "Stay still," he said gently. "You're safe now. I've got you." The words were simple, but they carried a weight of reassurance that Eliza clung to like a lifeline. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, Eliza was free. She collapsed against the cool earth, trembling, shaking, and overwhelmed by a flood of emotions: fear, relief, gratitude, and disbelief. Samuel helped her to sit up, wrapping a worn coat around her shoulders to shield her from the sun. He offered her water, which she drank greedily, feeling it revive her parched throat and tired body. For the first time in hours, Eliza felt a sense of safety, a feeling she had thought lost forever. As the townsfolk watched, murmuring among themselves, Samuel lifted his gaze and spoke firmly. "No one should be treated like this," he said, his voice carrying across the square. The words were not just for Eliza, they were a message to the entire town. He helped her to her feet, supporting her as they walked toward the edge of town. Eliza, still weak but determined, followed, clinging to the stranger who had become her savior. The journey away from the square was quiet at first, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Eliza could hardly speak, still in shock from the ordeal, while Samuel focused on leading her safely through the uneven streets and out toward the open land beyond Red Willow. Each step was a reminder that she had survived, that she had been given a second chance. And as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the horizon with shades of pink and purple, Eliza allowed herself to hope for freedom, for safety, and perhaps for a life where she could be valued for who she was, not condemned for what she could not control. By the time they reached the outskirts of town, the first stars were beginning to appear in the sky. Eliza turned to look back at Red Willow, the place that had caused her so much pain, and for the first time she did not feel fear. Instead, she felt a quiet strength rising within her, a determination to survive, to heal, and to embrace whatever life lay ahead. Samuel noticed the change in her, the way her shoulders straightened and her eyes held a spark of resilience. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that together they could face whatever challenges awaited. Eliza's heart was still heavy with memories of the cruelty she had endured, but in that moment, sitting beside a man who had risked everything to save her, she felt a flicker of hope. It was a small light, fragile and delicate, but it was enough. Enough to carry her through the night. Enough to remind her that she was still alive, and enough to begin the journey toward a new life. A life where she could be free, safe, and, perhaps, one day, truly happy. Eliza's hands were still trembling as she followed Samuel away from Red Willow. The town was now a distant cluster of wooden houses, and the dust of the square clung stubbornly to the soles of their boots. The open land stretched before them, rolling hills dotted with patches of dry grass, narrow streams glinting in the sunlight, and distant trees standing like silent guardians. For the first time in what felt like years, Eliza could breathe freely without the weight of judgment pressing on her chest. Yet the fear from earlier still lingered, a shadow at the edges of her thoughts. Samuel walked steadily, guiding her along a narrow path worn by travelers and wild animals. He said little at first, letting her gather her thoughts and strength. His presence was reassuring, strong, calm, and patient. Eliza stole glances at him from the corner of her eyes, noticing the way his hands, calloused and strong from years of labor, moved with careful precision. There was an ease in his movements, a quiet confidence that made her feel, against all odds, safe. "You've been through a lot," Samuel finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was low, almost gentle, yet carried the weight of sincerity. "You don't have to explain. Just know you're safe now." Eliza nodded, swallowing hard. The words were comforting, but the memory of the crowd, the ropes, the hot sand pressing against her body, still felt like it clung to her skin. She had been humiliated, terrified, and left helpless. But now, with Samuel beside her, a small flame of courage flickered within her. She wanted to speak, to share the story of how her life had brought her to this point, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply walked, letting the rhythm of their steps carry her forward. The journey was not easy. The path was uneven, rocky in places, and at times the hills rose sharply, forcing them to slow their pace. A small stream crossed their path, and Samuel helped Eliza step carefully across the slippery stones, holding her hand firmly. "Careful," he said. "One wrong step and you could fall. I've seen it happen before, and it isn't pretty." He gave her a small, reassuring smile. Eliza felt her lips curve slightly in response, grateful for even the smallest comfort. As they walked, the sun climbed higher in the sky, warm on their backs, but not as harsh as the midday heat in the town square. Samuel had brought water with him, stored in a leather flask, and he offered it to her. Eliza drank eagerly, feeling the cool liquid soothe her parched throat. She offered him a grateful smile, but he merely nodded, accustomed to the gesture yet not demanding it. Hours passed in quiet companionship. Occasionally Samuel would point out a distant hill, a cluster of trees, or a grazing deer, sharing details of the land that Eliza had never noticed. "This stretch of land is good for hunting," he explained. "And see those trees over there? They'll provide shade if we need to rest." She listened attentively, letting the rhythm of his words calm her mind. The world beyond Red Willow was vast, wild, and dangerous, but Samuel seemed to know it intimately, and his knowledge made her feel that they could survive whatever challenges lay ahead. Eliza began to speak slowly, hesitantly at first. She told Samuel fragments of her life, her childhood in a small village, the hopes she had carried when she married, the joys and laughter that had filled her days, and the sadness that had come when she could not have children. She did not speak of the cruel punishment in detail, only hinting at the suffering she had endured. Samuel listened without interruption, his eyes steady and kind, his presence a safe harbor for her fragile heart. "You've been strong," he said finally after a long pause. "Many would have given up, lost hope entirely, but not you." His words were simple, yet they struck her deeply. For the first time, someone had recognized not her failures, but her courage. Eliza felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of being seen, understood, and valued. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, Samuel decided they should find a place to rest. He led Eliza to a small grove of trees near a stream, the water sparkling in the fading light. He cleared a spot for her to sit and helped her remove her boots, letting her feet rest in the cool grass. Eliza sank down gratefully, feeling the tension in her muscles ease slightly. Samuel set up a small campfire, gathering dry wood from the grove. He worked with practiced hands, striking flint against steel until a small flame caught, growing steadily into a fire. The crackling of the flames, the smell of burning wood, and the gentle chirping of evening insects created a calm, almost magical atmosphere. Eliza watched in quiet awe, feeling a rare sense of peace she had not known in a long time. They ate a simple meal Samuel had carried with him: bread, cheese, and dried meat. It was humble, but to Eliza it felt like a feast. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, while Samuel kept an eye on the surroundings, ever vigilant, protective. There was an unspoken understanding between them now. She was fragile, recovering from trauma, and he was her shield, her guide through a world that could be cruel and unpredictable. Night fell, bringing with it a cool breeze that rustled through the trees. The stars began to twinkle overhead, and the moon cast a gentle glow over the landscape. Samuel offered Eliza a blanket to wrap around herself, and she accepted gratefully, feeling the soft fabric against her skin. They sat quietly, the fire casting flickering shadows on their faces. Words were no longer necessary. The silence itself was comforting, a shared space of safety and healing. As they rested, Eliza found herself reflecting on the events of the day. She had been terrified, humiliated, and powerless, yet she had survived. And now, for the first time, she felt that survival could lead to something more: hope, safety, and perhaps even friendship. Samuel's presence reminded her that not all people were cruel, that kindness and courage still existed in the world. The memory of his hands helping her, his calm voice reassuring her, and his steadfast determination to protect her filled her heart with gratitude. Samuel, too, had his thoughts. He had been traveling alone for months, seeking solace after the loss of his wife. Life on the trail was lonely, filled with hard work and quiet nights. Yet in rescuing Eliza, he had found a renewed sense of purpose. She was not only in need of protection, but she also carried a spirit that intrigued him, a mixture of fragility and quiet strength, of fear and determination. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but he also knew that together they could face it. The night deepened and sleep beckoned. Samuel took the first watch, keeping his eyes on the shadows, alert for any danger. Eliza drifted into a light, uneasy sleep, comforted by the warmth of the fire and the quiet strength of the man beside her. Dreams of freedom, safety, and a life beyond Red Willow filled her mind. She saw herself walking through open fields, laughing under the sun, and feeling the wind on her face, a life she had longed for but never dared to imagine. When she woke, the sun was just peeking over the horizon, painting the landscape in gentle hues of gold and pink. Samuel was already awake, tending to the fire and preparing for the day ahead. He offered her a smile, and she returned it, feeling a spark of connection that went beyond words. Together they packed up their camp, Samuel guiding her carefully along the path as they continued their journey. The days that followed were filled with small adventures: crossing streams, climbing hills, observing wildlife, and navigating the vast open land. Each challenge brought them closer, building trust and understanding. Samuel taught Eliza how to find water, identify edible plants, and stay safe in the wilderness. Eliza, in turn, shared her thoughts, fears, and hopes, slowly opening her heart to the possibility of friendship and perhaps something more with the cowboy who had saved her. By the time the town of Red Willow was no more than a distant memory on the horizon, Eliza realized that she had begun to heal. Not fully, but enough to hope. Samuel had shown her that the world could be kind, that people could be brave, and that even in the face of cruelty, there was room for hope and new beginnings. Together they walked toward the unknown, hearts cautious but open, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The sun hung high over the rolling hills as Samuel guided Eliza through the rugged landscape. The journey from Red Willow had been long and exhausting, but each step brought Eliza farther away from fear and closer to safety. She felt the tension in her muscles slowly ease, and a quiet sense of relief began to settle over her. The wide open spaces, the gentle rustle of grass in the wind, and the distant calls of birds made her feel almost free, as if the world had opened up just for her. Yet there was still a mixture of fear and uncertainty in her heart. She didn't know what awaited her at the end of the trail, only that Samuel had promised safety, and that promise was enough to keep her moving. Samuel had been quiet for most of the morning, allowing Eliza to focus on her own thoughts, to listen to the rhythm of her own breathing and the soft crunch of gravel beneath her boots. But now, as the sun reached its peak, he spoke. "We'll rest at my ranch tonight," he said, pointing to a distant cluster of trees near a small rise. "It's not far from here. You'll have a roof over your head, food, and a bed that isn't made of sand or rocks." Eliza's heart lifted at the words. The idea of a roof over her head, a warm meal, and a place to sleep without fear felt like a dream she had almost forgotten she could have. She nodded, swallowing hard as tears of relief pricked her eyes. She wanted to thank Samuel, to show him the depth of her gratitude, but the words failed her. Instead, she simply walked beside him, letting her presence speak the words her voice could not. The path to the ranch was not easy. They had to navigate a narrow trail along a steep hillside where loose stones threatened to slide underfoot. Samuel stayed close, offering a steady hand whenever Eliza faltered, his calm voice reassuring her. "Slowly," he said. "One step at a time. You'll be fine." And with each careful step, she felt her confidence grow, tiny fragments of courage returning that had been buried beneath fear and pain for so long. By midday, they reached a small stream that cut across their path. Samuel helped Eliza carefully step across the slippery stones, holding her hand firmly. The water was clear and cool, and Eliza took a moment to wash her face, letting the stream cleanse not just the dust from her skin but the weight of her fear as well. Samuel watched quietly, his eyes gentle, his presence steady. There was something reassuring about the way he moved, the way he spoke, and the way he simply existed without judgment. After crossing the stream, the ranch finally came into view. It was a modest place, built of weathered wood and surrounded by open fields. A small corral held a few horses, and a barn stood off to one side, its door slightly ajar. Smoke curled from a simple chimney, and the scent of wood smoke mixed with the fresh, earthy smell of the fields. Eliza's heart quickened at the sight. Here at last was a place that could feel like home, a place where she could be safe, cared for, and perhaps even happy. Samuel led her to the porch of the small house and helped her step inside. The interior was simple but clean, with a wooden table, a few chairs, and a small fireplace. A soft blanket was folded neatly on a cot in the corner, and a kettle of water warmed over the fire. Eliza's eyes widened at the sight. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could relax without fear. She could breathe, knowing that she was truly safe. "You can rest here," Samuel said gently, pointing to the cot. "I'll take care of dinner. You just sit, relax, and catch your breath." Eliza nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She sank onto the cot, feeling the soft blanket beneath her, and allowed herself to close her eyes for a moment. The world outside, the cruelty, the fear, the judgment, seemed to fade away. Here she was just Eliza, not a target of blame, not a victim, just a woman who deserved care and kindness. After a while, Samuel returned with a simple meal: fresh bread, a small piece of roasted meat, and a bowl of vegetables he had picked from the garden that morning. He set the food on the table and gestured for Eliza to eat. She took the first bite hesitantly, then slowly began to eat with more confidence, savoring the flavors and the warmth that came with a proper meal. Samuel watched her, not interrupting, but offering quiet encouragement with a nod or a small smile. As they ate, the conversation was soft, cautious at first. Samuel asked simple questions about her journey, about how she had managed to survive the ordeal in Red Willow. Eliza answered in fragments, still hesitant, still careful with her words. But gradually, the walls around her heart began to lower. She found herself telling him more about her life, the small joys, the moments of laughter, and even the little triumphs that had given her hope despite her struggles. Samuel listened attentively, never judging, never interrupting. His calm presence gave her the courage to speak, to let a part of herself that had been buried in fear and pain emerge. The evening brought a soft golden light through the windows, and the ranch seemed to take on a quiet, almost magical quality. Samuel tended to the fire in the fireplace, keeping it warm and cozy, while Eliza sat nearby, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in years. The rhythm of the evening, simple chores, the crackling fire, the gentle sounds of the fields outside, created a sense of normalcy that was both comforting and healing. As the night deepened, Samuel prepared a small bed for Eliza on the cot, placing the blanket carefully over her. He handed her a cup of warm water and spoke softly. "You've been through so much today. Rest now. Tomorrow is a new day, and we'll face it together."
Eliza accepted the cup, her fingers brushing against his.
She felt a spark of trust, fragile but growing, and she nodded silently, too moved for words. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was deep and restorative. Eliza dreamed of open fields, of running freely under the sun, and of laughter that was unburdened by fear. She dreamed of a life that could be gentle, kind, and full of possibility. And in her dreams, Samuel was there, not as a rescuer, but as a companion. Steady and strong, someone she could rely on. The next morning, the sun rose gently over the hills, casting light on the ranch and the surrounding fields. Samuel was already awake, tending to the animals and preparing breakfast. The smell of fresh bread and brewed coffee drifted through the house, and Eliza felt a small, happy smile tug at her lips. She dressed quickly, eager to help in any way she could, to contribute to the small world that had already given her so much comfort. Samuel noticed her energy and handed her a small basket. "There's some fruit in the orchard," he said. "You can pick what's ripe for breakfast." Eliza nodded, feeling a sense of purpose for the first time in weeks. She walked carefully through the orchard, the morning light warming her face, the trees heavy with fruit. She picked apples, pears, and a few plums, feeling the simple satisfaction of work and the beauty of the world around her. By mid-morning, they were back in the kitchen, preparing a hearty breakfast together. The act of working side by side, sharing simple tasks, created a bond between them that was gentle but meaningful. Eliza found herself laughing quietly at Samuel's occasional clumsiness with the pans, and Samuel smiled at the sound, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not felt since the loss of his wife. After breakfast, they spent the day tending to the ranch. Samuel showed Eliza how to feed the animals, how to mend fences, and how to maintain the small garden that provided much of their food. Eliza was a quick learner, and Samuel was patient, guiding her with gentle hands and kind words. The hours passed quickly, filled with small victories and quiet moments of connection. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the fields, Eliza realized how much she had begun to trust Samuel. The fear that had clung to her since Red Willow was loosening its grip, replaced by a cautious hope. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, that healing took time. But she also knew that with Samuel by her side, she had a chance to rebuild her life, to find safety and perhaps even happiness. That evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the stars appear, Samuel spoke softly. "You're stronger than you think," he said, "and you don't have to face the world alone anymore." Eliza looked at him, her eyes reflecting the light of the fire and the stars above. She nodded, a small but determined smile on her lips. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that she had found a place where she could heal and grow. And in that quiet, gentle moment, Eliza knew that her journey was only beginning. But for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, with courage, hope, and the quiet strength that Samuel's kindness had helped her rediscover. Days passed at the ranch, each one bringing Eliza a sense of calm and security she had never known before. The sun rose gently over the hills each morning, casting golden light across the fields and illuminating the small house where she now lived. The sounds of animals, the rustle of leaves, and the gentle hum of life around the ranch created a peaceful rhythm. Eliza found herself waking each day with a small spark of hope, a quiet anticipation for the simple tasks and routines that gave her life purpose. Samuel continued to be her guide, not just in the chores of ranch life but in helping her heal from the deep scars of the past. He taught her how to care for the animals, feeding the horses, brushing their coats, and leading them to pasture. Eliza discovered that she had a natural ability with the animals. They seemed to respond to her gentle voice and patient touch. This connection brought her joy and a sense of accomplishment, reminding her that she could contribute, that she was valued, and that she was capable. Together they tended to the garden. Samuel showed her how to plant seeds, water them, and recognize when the plants needed extra care. Eliza marveled at the simple miracle of life, how a tiny seed could grow into a strong, nourishing plant. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction each time she harvested fruits or vegetables, knowing that her efforts were feeding not just herself, but also Samuel and the animals on the ranch. These small victories, simple though they were, helped to rebuild her confidence and self-worth. The bond between Eliza and Samuel grew quietly, strengthened by shared work and small acts of kindness. Samuel never pushed her to speak about the pain she had endured. Instead, he offered a listening ear whenever she was ready. He shared stories of his own life, speaking gently of his wife, the love they had shared, and the loneliness he had felt since her passing. His openness encouraged Eliza to share more of herself, her fears, and her dreams. The act of speaking, of being heard without judgment, became a source of healing. Eliza began to notice subtle changes within herself. She laughed more freely, the sound light and musical, echoing across the fields. She felt a warmth in her chest when Samuel praised her efforts or simply smiled at her. The constant fear and anxiety that had once dominated her life began to fade, replaced by cautious hope and a growing sense of belonging. She realized that she was no longer defined by the cruelty she had endured in Red Willow, but by her strength, her kindness, and the life she was building at the ranch. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Samuel asked Eliza to help him with a small repair in the barn. Together they worked to mend a broken fence, laughing at their occasional clumsiness and celebrating each successful fix. Eliza found joy in the simplicity of the work and in the shared moments with Samuel. She realized that happiness could be found in the smallest of things: a shared smile, a warm meal, the satisfaction of completing a task together. Evenings at the ranch became a time for reflection and quiet companionship. They would sit on the porch, watching the sunset behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, filling the room with warmth and light. These moments were filled with a sense of peace that Eliza had never known. She felt safe, valued, and cared for. The bond between them was no longer just one of protector and rescued. It was becoming a deeper connection built on trust, respect, and quiet affection. Eliza's confidence grew as she took on more responsibilities around the ranch. She learned to manage the animals, keep the house in order, and maintain the garden. Each task completed successfully strengthened her belief in herself and her ability to shape her own life. Samuel encouraged her independence, never treating her as fragile or incapable, but as a partner who could contribute meaningfully to their shared life. This respect and encouragement fueled her sense of self-worth, helping her heal from the deep wounds of judgment and cruelty she had endured. One evening, after a long day of work, Samuel and Eliza sat together by the fire. Samuel handed her a cup of warm tea, and they sat in comfortable silence, the firelight dancing across their faces. "You've come a long way," he said softly, "not just in learning to work the ranch, but in finding your strength."
I see it in you every day. Eliza felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of gratitude, pride, and something deeper she was only beginning to understand.
Eliza began to share more of her dreams and hopes, the life she wished to create for herself. She spoke of wanting to help others who were in need, to create a place of safety and kindness, much like the ranch had become for her. Samuel listened attentively, offering encouragement and practical advice, and the two began to imagine a future together, a life built on trust, compassion, and shared purpose. The trust between them grew stronger as they faced small challenges together. One afternoon, a young foal had wandered too close to the stream, and Samuel and Eliza worked together to guide it safely back to the corral. The foal had been frightened, and Eliza's gentle touch helped calm it, while Samuel's steady presence ensured it did not run into danger. Afterward, they laughed together, sharing a sense of accomplishment and relief. These shared experiences, simple though they were, created a deep bond built on mutual respect and care. Eliza's healing was not just emotional, but also physical. The work on the ranch strengthened her body, giving her energy and resilience she had not felt in years. She took pride in her ability to care for the animals, maintain the garden, and contribute to the household. Each day brought new challenges, but with Samuel by her side, she felt capable of facing them. The life she had once feared was now one she was actively shaping, filled with purpose, joy, and connection. Evenings became a time of reflection and gratitude. Eliza would sit by the fire, thinking about how far she had come, the kindness Samuel had shown, and the possibilities that lay ahead. She realized that her past, while painful, had not defined her. She was no longer a victim of cruelty or judgment. She was a survivor, strong and capable, and ready to embrace the future. Samuel, too, found healing in their shared life. Caring for Eliza, teaching her, and sharing moments of quiet companionship brought him a sense of purpose he had not felt since losing his wife. He admired her resilience, her courage, and the gentle strength that she displayed in even the smallest of tasks. The quiet evenings, the shared work, and the growing trust between them created a sense of partnership, a bond that went beyond mere survival and touched the heart of both of them. As the weeks passed, Eliza began to take initiative in the life of the ranch. She started small projects, like planting new flowers near the house, organizing the pantry, and creating a comfortable space for the animals. Samuel encouraged her creativity, offering guidance when needed but allowing her freedom to make choices. This independence empowered Eliza, reinforcing the sense that she was capable, valued, and able to shape her own destiny. One late afternoon, as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Samuel and Eliza sat on a hill overlooking the ranch. The field stretched out below them, the animals grazing peacefully, the house bathed in warm light. "You've brought life back to this place," Samuel said softly, "and to me."
Eliza turned to him, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset.
She felt a deep connection, a trust that had grown over weeks of shared work, quiet conversations, and mutual care. Eliza knew that the road ahead would still have challenges. The memory of Red Willow and the cruelty she had endured would never fully fade. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. She had Samuel, the ranch, and the life they were building together. She had a sense of purpose, a growing confidence, and the knowledge that kindness and trust could exist even in a harsh world. As night fell, Eliza and Samuel returned to the house. They prepared a simple meal together, laughing and sharing stories as they worked. The fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with warmth and light. Sitting together afterward, sharing the quiet peace of the evening, Eliza felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had been rescued from fear and cruelty, but she had found something more healing, purpose, and a bond that gave her hope for the future. And as she drifted to sleep that night, wrapped in the soft blanket on her cot, Eliza felt a quiet joy she had never known. She knew that she was safe, valued, and cared for. She knew that her life was beginning anew, and that the journey ahead, though uncertain, held the promise of love, trust, and happiness. The days at the ranch had become a rhythm that Eliza cherished. Each sunrise brought new light, new tasks, and new moments to feel alive. She no longer woke in fear, no longer trembled at the thought of judgment or cruelty. Instead, she greeted the day with cautious hope and a growing sense of purpose. The work with Samuel, feeding the animals, tending the garden, repairing fences, was not easy, but it filled her with satisfaction. More importantly, it gave her a sense of belonging. For the first time in years, she felt that she had a place where she was valued, needed, and safe. One morning, as the sun painted the sky in pale gold, a rider appeared on the horizon. Eliza's heart skipped a beat. She had not expected visitors, and the sight of someone coming from the direction of Red Willow stirred memories she had tried to leave behind. Samuel, noticing her hesitation, approached her quietly and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry," he said gently. "Let's see who it is before we decide anything." The rider drew closer, and as he reached the ranch, it became clear that he was a messenger from Red Willow. Samuel and Eliza walked to meet him, and the man dismounted, removing his hat politely. "I bring news from your old town," he said, his voice neutral. "Things have changed since you left. They realize their actions were cruel, and the town is not the same as before. But they want you to know they regret what happened." Eliza felt a rush of conflicting emotions. relief that the town recognized the wrong, anger at the cruelty she had suffered, and uncertainty about what to do with this information. She turned to Samuel, whose calm gaze reassured her. "You don't have to make any decisions now," he said softly. "This is your life, your choice. No one can tell you where you belong. You decide that." She thought of Red Willow, of the town that had judged her, humiliated her, and nearly destroyed her. She remembered the hot sand pressing against her body, the crowd's cold stares and the endless whispers of blame. Then she thought of the ranch, the soft warmth of the sun on her face, the gentle rhythm of the animals, and Samuel's quiet, steady presence. The choice became clear. Her past was behind her. Her future lay here, in this place of safety and hope. Eliza smiled, a small but confident smile that carried the weight of her journey. "I'm not going back," she said firmly. "This is my home now. This is where I want to stay." Samuel nodded, pride and relief in his eyes. He understood fully. The courage it took to leave behind the past and choose a new life was immense, and Eliza had done it. Life at the ranch continued, but now there was a new depth to their companionship. Samuel and Eliza were no longer just two people surviving the wilderness. They were partners, building a shared life with trust, respect, and care. They faced each day together, supporting each other through both challenges and small victories. Eliza's confidence and independence grew, and Samuel admired her resilience, her kindness, and the gentle strength she carried in everything she did. One afternoon, they worked together to repair the barn roof. The task was demanding, requiring coordination and patience. Eliza held the wooden beams steady while Samuel hammered them into place. They laughed when mistakes were made and celebrated when the work was done correctly. The simple act of building something together mirrored the life they were building, steady, patient, and filled with care. Each day brought a sense of purpose, each task a reminder of the strength they had both found in each other. As the weeks passed, Eliza continued to explore her own abilities and creativity. She began to plant new flowers near the house, arranging them in patterns that brought color and life to the small yard. Samuel encouraged her, helping when needed but allowing her the freedom to make choices. This independence was empowering, reinforcing her belief that she could shape her own life and destiny. She was no longer a victim of circumstance. She was a woman creating her own path. Evenings became moments of reflection and gentle companionship. They would sit together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the hills, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. Sometimes they spoke of dreams for the future, of small improvements to the ranch, or of the simple joys they had discovered in their daily life. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, letting the presence of each other fill the space with quiet warmth. Eliza's healing continued, not as a sudden transformation, but as a gentle unfolding of strength, hope, and confidence. She realized that the past, though painful, had shaped her, but it did not define her. She had been buried in fear and cruelty, but she had been rescued, nurtured, and given the chance to reclaim her life. And she had done so, not just surviving, but learning to live fully, to trust, and to hope again. One evening, as a soft breeze rustled through the trees and the sky turned to deep indigo, Samuel and Eliza walked along the ridge overlooking the ranch. The fields stretched out below them, bathed in the gentle glow of twilight. Samuel stopped and turned to her, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "You've come so far," he said quietly. "I see your strength every day, and I feel honored to share this life with you." Eliza felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet, steady joy that she had never known before. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied softly. "You saved me, and you helped me find myself again." Samuel smiled, and for a moment they simply stood there, letting the connection between them speak more than words ever could. Days turned into weeks, and the seasons began to change. Spring arrived with gentle rains, bringing new life to the fields and gardens. Eliza reveled in the growth around her, the flowers blooming, the vegetables ripening, and the animals thriving under their care. The ranch was no longer just a place of survival. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of shared life. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, Eliza realized how much she had grown. She was no longer the frightened, powerless girl buried in sand and red willow. She was a woman of strength, courage, and resilience. She had faced fear and cruelty and had emerged not broken, but stronger, wiser, and full of hope. And she had done so not alone, but with Samuel's steady presence beside her, offering support, care, and a quiet, unwavering companionship. They continued their work, side by side, building a life filled with purpose and trust. Samuel taught her new skills, and Eliza shared her creativity and ideas, adding her touch to every corner of the ranch. The animals thrived, the garden flourished, and the house became a home filled with warmth and love. And through it all, their bond deepened. Not a rush of passion, but a slow, steady growth of trust, understanding, and shared hope. One evening, as the sun set and the sky was painted with hues of gold and violet, Samuel and Eliza sat on the porch together, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. "We've come a long way," Samuel said softly. "And there's still more ahead, I'm sure. But I wouldn't want to face it with anyone else." Eliza smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Neither would I," she replied. "I've learned that life can be cruel, but it can also be kind. And kindness and hope make all the difference." As the stars began to appear, shimmering like diamonds in the clear night sky, Eliza felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had been rescued from cruelty and fear, but she had gained something even more precious, a life filled with trust, purpose, and the quiet certainty that she was valued. She had found not just safety, but a home, a companion, and a future worth living. And in that moment, Eliza knew that no matter what challenges the world might bring, she had the strength, courage, and hope to face them. She was no longer defined by the fear and pain of her past. She was defined by her resilience, her kindness, and the life she was creating with Samuel. Together they would face whatever came next, side by side, strong, and ready for a future full of possibility. The ranch, bathed in the gentle glow of the moon, stood as a symbol of new beginnings. It was a place where Eliza could thrive, where she could heal fully, and where she could embrace life on her own terms. The past was behind her, the future open and full of promise. And for the first time in a long time, Eliza truly felt free.